Well, I literally wake up with a smile on my face, feeling grateful for another day I never thought I would see. But here we are, and I'm sure that resonates with you as well. But sometimes, by the time you begin to engage the day, the feeling of frustration, sets in sometimes because of some actions of individuals who ensure that they make life difficult for all of us. And I'm talking about the flood, of course. We know the things we've been doing, ensuring that we experience flood every year. Some of our actions that are not guided. And of course, by the time we begin to do the right thing, I'm sure the incidence of flood will be a thing of the past. Now, whenever the rainy season comes around, the issue of flood continues to trend in Nigeria. And sometimes you wonder if the solution is elusive, or maybe we're just immune to the solution in the country. So let's just take this background report put together by Francis Obi, and after that we look into other aspects.
Floods are major disasters affecting many countries of the world, as it has posed tremendous danger to people's lives and properties. Floods cause about 1/3 of all death, 1/3 of all injuries, and 1/3 of all damage from natural disasters. Heavy seasonal rains are a regular feature of life in Nigeria, and towns close to the country's main rivers are particularly vulnerable.
This area is called Galadima Interchange, but people call it Galadima Roundabout. On this spot in 2019, we lost alive one of our directors, FCT Judiciary. You recall that the water level was so high that it washed him, it carried him away. Part of the mitigative measures that we have put in place is this. We have warning signs in all the vulnerable locations. That is one. Secondly, we have decided to barricade this slip road that comes from Games Village to Galadima Interchange, because the road here going to the airport is a bit low, and that is why we had to barricade the road to stop people from plying this road during the rainy season.
Nigeria's flooding is mainly human-induced, with current poor town planning practices and inadequate or non-existent environmental infrastructure contributing to this issue.
The Minister of FCT has given directives that all obstructions should be pulled down. That is, all houses that have been built on waterways should be pulled down. And a lot of them have been pulled down, and that is why you can see that there's free flow. When those houses were standing on the waterways, what used to happen was that the flow of water becomes slow or it becomes stagnant. And that is why the water, by the time it gets to Galadima Interchange, which is the collection center of the water before it flows into the River Niger, there will be no free flow, and that leads to flooding. And when it gets flooded, a lot of people insist on crossing the road. They want to drive through the running waters, and they get drowned. The last person that got drowned here was one. A lot of people were trying to stop him. The same thing with what happened in Galadima Interchange in 2019. People were trying to stop them from plying the road, from driving through the running waters. They refused to listen. And that is why we came up with the idea of barricading the road during this rainy season.
The indiscriminate disposal of waste is damaging the street, as well as blocking the drains during the raining season. Therefore, The need for good attitudinal change is important to checking improper waste disposal.
A lot of people, what they do is when it rains, they bring out their refuse and just dump it anywhere with the hope that the flowing water will carry it away. But when it carries it away, definitely it will be deposited somewhere. And that will block the waterways, that will block the drainages around our environment, and it will cause flooding.
One area in which Nigeria has attempted to establish forward thinking is through early warning systems. Nigerian Meteorological Agency make predictions about potential flooding and warning every year. But are the people and relevant agencies taking precautionary measures?
We should listen to early warnings. We should look at the weather predictions, and we know when to go out and when to come back. People that have houses on waterways or people that have built on floodplains, we are pleading with them to vacate such locations. Buy a land during the rainy season. That will help you, will take you a long way, because when you buy a land during the rainy season, you'll be able to know the condition of that location. Is it a floodplain? Is it a vulnerable location? Is it a swampy place? Is it a place that can be flooded? When it rains, don't drive on running waters. You never can undermine the power of water, no matter how small the water is. Once it is flowing, please do not drive on running waters.
If the impact of flooding is to be reduced in the future, the consequences of rapid urbanization and poor urban planning needs to be addressed. Our focus on Weekend Deal today will be on flooding in Nigeria and probable solutions to curbing its spread.
Well, it's obvious that we have a myriad of challenges when we talk about, mitigating the impact of flooding in Nigeria. Yes, we have the annual climate, prediction. We have the flood prediction, flood outlook, and all of that. But to be fair to some of these agencies, as soon as these predictions are out, they try to engage different stakeholders to ensuring that they create awareness about some of these challenges. But it's like nobody cares, and that's why we continue to experience flood in our communities or environment. But that does not mean that we will stop. We'll continue to talk about it until we get it right. And of course, in Lagos, certainly when you talk about flood, it's nothing new to them. So we're going to take this next report from Lagos. It's talked about flooding in Lagos Island and the way out.
Residents of Lagos, Africa's most populous nation, are used to the yearly floods that engulf the coastal city during the months of March to November. In mid-July, however, the major business district of Lagos Island experienced one of its worst floods in recent years. Several residents of waterlogged areas in Lagos have decried the destruction of properties and livelihoods caused by incessant flooding.
Like 3 days, we can't sleep inside. We are sleeping in another person's house. Water did not let us to sleep. We are carrying our load outside. We just want to do it today. That's why I call it.
Sometimes you don't know how. Maybe it's about the drainage or, So this place do disturb a lot. If you came here yesterday, as in all these keke and moto, they can't even pass.
All these places were full of waters because we could not even the streets, everywhere was just messed up. The government can do it, individual can do it, like if they have the money.
Lagos is a coastal city. A large part of Lagos is below the sea level. Matter of fact, in the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change report, Lagos is one of those cities that are projected that may go under in a matter of a few decades if current trend in climate change, global warming continues.
He spoke further on the Nigerian Meteorological Agency's predictions, causes, people's attitudes to drainages, and role of local government and state authorities.
The primary drainages that are supposed to be under local government, the secondary and tertiary drainages, all have been compromised. They are inadequate to start with, and largely a lot of these have become silted. The state waits for the rainy season to start, and then they start to clear drains, and the debris will be packed at the edge of the drain, and they will say they are waiting for it to dry before they evacuate, and before it dries up for the evacuation, another rain will fall and push everything back.
Recent floods in Lagos have not spared many areas of the state, including Agege, Alapere, Mushin, Surulere, Ikorodu, Lekki, Ebutimeta, Iyanoworo, and many others, especially the most recent occurrence.
It affected so many walks of sector of the economy, of the society in general, as it affected the farmland, the poultry, fish farm, as well as human being. Altogether, between Lagos and Ogun State, 7 lives were lost, while 9 people were rescued alive.
Suleiman speaks further on precautionary measures.
So what we need to know as a people is that the reality of climate change is upon us, and it's a gloomy reality, unfortunately. And all that talk about us not being responsible for climate change and we are the worst, it is true. But we should move away from that and take responsibility. After all, we are the ones cutting our forests every day. We are the ones allowing the Chinese to come into our forests and deplete our forests and export our trees. We are the ones allowing charcoal to be exported from Nigeria, a country that more than half of it is already facing desert encroachment.
As Lagosians anticipate more heavy downpour in its various communities according to recent predictions from experts, it is very important for residents in these affected areas to work in collaboration with relevant authorities in clearing their drainages to reduce the effect of flooding in Lagos.
Well, one thing is certain: we cannot continue to deny the climate change reality in Nigeria because, yes, we contribute less to it, but the impact is definitely felt by all, and we must continue to do whatever we can in order to adapt to ensuring that we reduce its impact on the society and as well as the environment. And talking about still flooding, of course, we had a session with Abbas G. Idris, is the Director General, FCT Emergency Management Agency, and of course in this interview he revealed quite a lot, so let's listen today.
The challenge we are having is that mostly is attitudinal challenge, because people doesn't want to heed to the early warning system, and then we also violate our planning rules. A lot of compromise are being done where it's not supposed to be. You will see people building indiscriminately on the waterways, blocking the water channels, and then dumping refuse indiscriminately as well. So these are the causes of the flooding, especially if we are going to narrow it to Abuja. You know, Abuja is well planned, and we have all the drains, we have all the stormwater channels, and everything that has been done 40-something years before now. And those people that plan Abuja, a majority of them, if not all, are not alive today. But they had the focus and they planned it very well. But people of these days, they feel that as if the land that is allocated to them is not enough. They have to extend it beyond that and cover up the flood-prone areas or the water course water courses, and then you see that when it rains, the water will not have access, and then it has to pass through the building and cause flooding. Apart from the early warnings system that we have, which the Nigerian Meteorological Agency first ring the bell by telling us the prediction of the seasonal climate prediction. That is an early warning, because they will be able to tell you how much rain you are expecting, and from so period to another period. Then that is an early warning. Then the Nigerian Hydrological Services Agency, NISA, will give you the flood outlook. The flood outlook areas, the local governments, the states that are going to experience flooding in different categories: highly probable, probable, and then most probable. So all these are being given. It is now the responsibility of relevant agencies, the state governments, the local governments, and also the chiefdoms and other units to now organize themselves and cascade that information to the general public, so that the entire public gets to know about the flooding system in Nigeria and in their community. And then what do they do? It is also our responsibility. When I say our responsibility, these collective clusters to now come out and say, okay, this is what you should do before flooding, during flooding, and after flooding. But the most important key thing there is prevention. We need to prevent the flooding. And how do we prevent it? It's the same method. You teach the public how to prevent flooding. We can do it, and we are doing it. So, but another challenge is that how many people are willing to listen to this? If you get to a community, you want to address them, you find out that only children will come out. You find out only women, mostly, they come out. The heads of the family are not there. They say they have meetings, they want to go to the shop, they want to do this. And so by the time the flood comes, they will be caught unawares. So education about the flooding must be disseminated to every Nigerian. If you go to the developed countries, everybody has information about flooding, and they follow weather focus. The way they follow weather focus in developed nations, we don't follow here, and we don't care about it. And we are getting a snapshot of the weather focus courtesy of NIMED and NTA, but yet people don't really look at it and take it more serious. Maybe that is the time they can even change the channel. So it is something that collectively we have to educate ourselves and ourselves part of the system, the weather system, and also part of the environment. Then with that, we'll be able to really adapt to a situation. Lokogoma has no engineering infrastructure yet. Unless and until the engineering infrastructure is provided, you will continue to have those lapses and those flooding occurring in that Lokogoma area, and even some other areas that doesn't have, because the engineering infrastructure is the one taking care of all those flood aspects. You will have drainages, you will have river bridges, you will have culverts, you will have stormwater access and everything linked to the waterways that will go to the discharge point. But if you look at critically at the Lokogoma setting, you find out the houses are not even on a straight line. You will see that somebody will build his house here, somebody will come this side and build. You will see, is it a triangle or a cycle? You can't even say. So that is to show that it is not an organized settlement. So unless it is organized and restructured, it will continue to have. And that is why we are giving a close marking to Lokogoma and surveillance. And whoever that we saw building on the waterways, we have to remove it. You remember in 2019 what happened? We removed more than 200 houses in that place, and that was how we had some sanity in that area. And that is a continuous exercise. So any obstruction along the waterways is going to be removed so that we can have peace. And you know, Lokogoma, the river Kabusa and the other river also is surrounding that area. So even if it doesn't rain in Lokogoma, the water coming through the river can also affect the settlement, because in most cases you will see as they are building, they are diverting the water course. So once you divert the water course, definitely it will go and affect other neighborhood, and so it will cause flooding. But what the measures we are taking, remedial measure now, is trying to change the box culverts, the culverts they make, and then also opening up the channels of the water channels so that it can get to Galadimawa interchange, and then from there it will now take its way to the discharge point at Gurara River. Yeah, you see, there are two issues there. Before you can build an evacuation center, you must have assessed all the city and found out that evacuation is the last resort that you can do to a community. Abuja doesn't fall within that category. Abuja is well planned, and all flooding in Abuja are caused by human-induced factors. Those clans that you are talking about, they have a natural outlook. Natural. They are planned, they have plans, but naturally their flood comes naturally. It's not because of anything. So they have evacuation centers well built, and then they have also an early warning system that is well structured, that can get your phone, even if your phone is off, it can vibrate. Early warning is sent, and then so that you can easily evacuate to a higher ground evacuation center. If we go back to what happened in 2012, you take Kogi State, for example. You see, they have an evacuation center built. There are hostels built along those rivers where they are doing fishing. And they have hostels built by the Flood Relief Committee headed by Alhaji Dangote. So as I'm talking to you, those hostels are there. That is when if you pass that message back to higher ground, then they have to move from where they are to that hostel built by the Dangote Committee, Flood Relief Committee. So that is what is expected. In this FCT at the moment, we don't have an evacuation center, and I said because of the peculiarities of the FCT, that does not mean that we cannot get prepared because of the peculiarities that we are seeing in terms of climate change crisis. So we are making effort at the moment to acquire a land that we can have an evacuation center permanently in case things will change. But at the moment, all we need to do is to change our attitude and then obey the planning rules. Abuja will be safer for everybody in terms of flooding. We are not, and I'm always an advocate that we can arrest this water. It's an asset to us. Flood is not. It's not all floods that are a disaster. When we have much excess water, we can arrest the water and make good use of it. I always had the example with Jabi Lake. Jabi Lake is an artificial lake. Many people that came to Abuja, they thought Jabi Lake has been existing before. It's an artificial lake, and we can extend that artificial lake to go around Abuja like River Thames in London, and then we can use it for tourist attraction. If you go to London, you can cruise on the River Thames, having dinner on River Thames for 6 hours, going around the London city. So we can do it. By the time we arrest the water, and extend Jabi Lake to go around the city, link it around to Galadima, Lokogoma, and then go around, you see that it makes things beautiful, and it's going to be a revenue. It will attract revenue for the government. So these are the things that we'll do. But what we are doing now, we are wasting the resources, that is the water. and then also we are losing money. If you go to some countries, they are looking for that water that is flooding in your house to arrest it. If you go to other countries, your own waste is a resource to them. Whatever you drop, whether solid or liquid, it goes to the recycle center, and they treat it and do, especially Israel. That is what they do. That is what they live on. They don't throw, they don't, there's nothing like wasting in, that you are wasting in this. All their toilets are linked to their recycle center. And we can also use it for dry season farming, which is going to also help and generate employment for unemployed youth, and then improve our food insecurity, and then a lot of things are happening. We get engaged, but now we are just wasting the water. I think most of the problems we're having are really caused by the developers, especially when we're talking of areas like Lokogoma and we're talking of Trademore Estate. These are the two notorious places in terms of flooding in the FCT. And if you look at it critically, it's the fault of the developers, because they got the land, they didn't wait for the engineering infrastructure to get there, and they sold the land. Today, where are they? They are nowhere to be found. And then people are suffering. So that is why people are saying they bought the land. You bought your land, yes, but were you given approval to build it? No. So if you don't have approval to build, who are you going to blame? You have to blame the estate developer who sold the land to you. And he has a guideline. He has all the rules before at his own disposal. As far as government is concerned, it's an illegal structure on that area. And especially the one at Trademore also, the same thing, the same problem. Nobody has any permit, any plan, approved plan, building plan to build that kind. And they are all managed by estate developers. Those ones that are coming up, I'm advising the residents of the FCT, before they can buy any land or buy any house at any estate or at any other places that is not even estate, they should cross-check with the authorities. The relevant authorities are there. We have the ages, we have the lands, we have the development controls who give approval. Make sure that you cross-check, you do your search and ensure that everything is perfect before you can go ahead to pay. Otherwise, at the end of the day, you are going to lose it. And you know there is penalty. Now we are going to enforce it. If we remove any structure that is built without approval on waterways, you are going to pay the cost of removal and you are going to be prosecuted for violating the law. The law is there on the Urban and Regional Planning Act. So therefore, there is going to be massive and total enforcement of that. And that is why you can see everywhere, every day, there is demolition going on in Abuja today. And nobody is going to stop that. If we have anything, let's meet at the court and then we'll now resolve it. In fact, some communities, the chiefs are selling land. They are not supposed to. Don't buy land from anybody. Buy land. Abuja is not selling land. They are allocating lands. If you apply for land, you get your approval, the minister will approve for you, give you letter of allocation. That is all. Go and pay premium. That is all. They are not selling land. Anybody who sold land to you, before you buy it, go and cross-check and ensure that you are buying genuine land, or else you forfeit it and you'll be jailed.
Wow. You forfeit the land and be jailed at the same time. So do the needful, ensure that you get your land from the appropriate authorities. And of course, that interview was quite revealing in the sense that we know that solving or checkmating the incidents of flood in the country is actually a collective responsibility. We must change our attitude and ensuring that we obey the master plan of any given city in Nigeria. Right now, we go on a break, and after that, we still have more for you. So please stay with us. All right, thank you for staying with us. And of course, our numbers are on the screen right there. You can send in your contribution and, of course, share with us how you are experiencing flooding in your environment. And, of course, we are also going to be engaging much later on the show the Director General of National Environmental Standards and Regulations Enforcement Agency. Of course, this is one critical agency that deals with enforcement when it comes to environmental violations, and of course right now we go to Lagos mainland. Of course, we've shared with you the story on the flood in Lagos Island, but right now let's see what the people in the mainland are experiencing when it comes to flooding over there. So let's take this next report.
Every year in Nigeria, people witness flooding. This is caused by heavy rainfall, inadequate and poorly maintained drainage systems. In Lagos State, for instance, people living in the mainland around Ikeja, Agege, Festac, Orile have been facing flooding challenges, shared their experiences.
We cannot go to school at all. We cannot, even if I come back from school, we are going to stay inside the school. They are not going to open the gates for us. So the water used to feel like it will be hard for people to pass, and used to enter inside the house of these people. So we will not be able to pass anywhere until the rain stop and the water go down.
Whenever it rains in our area, everywhere gets flooded within 2 minutes and people can get drowned. We have 2 big schools in our area with a large population. We want the government to come to our aid.
Business is not okay. Business is very bad because everybody is fearing. Like this shop now, the woman know the opposite that time. Water will enter everywhere. Everybody, they fear.
It is a true fact that each time it rains, the roads and streets of the mentioned areas in Lagos get flooded due to blocked drainage or poor disposal of refuse.
When you see people building estates, building houses, when we build our estate, we forget to put in place good channel, good drainage channel that our water can pass through, can move through. Number one. Number two, some of us even build on flood plain. We know flood plains are areas that you don't need to start putting construction on. We do that. Number three, there are some of our drainages that are narrowed. Why are they narrowed? Apart from design in the construction, it is we people that will go around and take bottles of plastic, put it on the floor. These bottles go straight to block all this channel, block all this drainage system. Then eventually we people have caused what we call environmental degradation.
Quite interesting. The Nigerian Meteorological Agency on its part provides seasonal rainfall predictions, but communication remains a problem. The human-induced causes of flooding should be addressed urgently because flooding can result in loss of life and damages to personal property and infrastructure.
NIMET has usually announced on frequent basis, daily basis, periodic basis, watch out for tomorrow, watch out for next week. Those are preparation. One of the problems we have, I'm not saying people are indisciplined. One of the problems we have is people don't take cognizance of health and safety. We don't look at it. It is when it turns into negative thing on us that we shed tears.
The immediate impacts of flooding include loss of human life, damage to property, destruction of crops, loss of livestock, and deterioration of health conditions owing to waterborne diseases and disruptions of industries. The question now is, how are the local government authorities addressing this challenge?
We've taken over upon ourselves whenever it's rain. Sometimes when it's rain in the night, we always make sure that we call ourselves. Nobody should enter, nobody should go out. Sometimes we call the security that they should not allow anybody to move whenever it's rain at night.
We've worked on the environmental management in the past, so where we've been able to let them know the importance of this. If the rain is not here, we still need to follow the lay down rules and make sure that we follow it to the end, not do it partway and really wait for the rain to come and be disposing our refuse through the canals. That will not work for anybody. But this time around, the rainy season met the construction, and it also will be slowed down or stopped for a while. I think that is the plan of the government, is to reconstruct that drainage so that it could be able to take a lot of water.
The loss of loved ones has deep impacts, especially on children. Displacement from one's home, loss of property and disruption to business and social affairs can cause continuing stress. For some people, the psychological impacts can be long-lasting.
All right. Flooding is certainly something that we don't want to experience, but it's like we don't want to go to the stream, yet we keep, walking ourselves to the stream, and then you wonder exactly what is happening, because sometimes when you talk about the authorities concerned, you know when people build on waterways, you know when people dump refuse on the drainage systems. What do you do at that point? For example, people build on waterways. Do you want to see them erect those buildings before you can destroy them? Or you just want to take the action right from the onset? Well, let's welcome our guest into the studio. He is Professor Liu Joro, the Director General of National Environmental Standards and Regulations Enforcement Agency. You are welcome to our studios.
Good morning, Nigeria.
Yeah, some of these issues so far, being discussed from our reports has something to do with your agency as well. But before we engage you, let's quickly take this next report that talks about addressing the challenge of poor drainage system in Nigeria, and it is put together by Magdalene.
Sustainable drainage systems are intended to regulate surface water runoff to where it falls and stimulate natural drainage as closely as possible. But recently, environmental disasters have become a common phenomenon in the world, and Nigeria inclusive.
The only way to remove that water after it has percolated or saturated the soil is for that water to flow on the surface, and it flows through natural structures called drains. These drains can be natural, built by God, or it can be built by man. Now, in a situation where in a built environment human beings interfere with natural drains, certainly the water will try to find its way, and that is a source of flood and its associated impact, negative impact on the citizens and communities.
Since flooding began years ago due to indiscriminate development of houses and the conversion of communities' canal into a dumping site, residents have continued to suffer huge losses of personal possessions, while others watch their properties get destroyed. The question is, why build without paying attention to the drainage system?
In the city, anybody that sees a small piece of land, they would like to grab it and put up a structure. No, you have to make provision for green space. The green space is there for a reason. That is why it has to be protected, because that green space equally protects the communities as well. So if you interfere with your green community and nature decides to act, of course you have to pay the price. But outside the cities, the problem is less noticeable because space is not a limiting factor. If you want to put up a structure, first you need to look for a plot of land in an area that is planned by town planners, because the town planners will make provision for drains. Not only small culvert that water will flow, but huge adequate drains that can take up storm water. You need to make provision for a gutter that is big enough to accommodate runoff, because in the city most places are concreted and water has no place to percolate down the soil profile. It is usually drained in channels, drains, and small waterways.
While water channels need to be cleared in some satellite towns to avoid this menace, the Developmental Control of Federal Capital Development Authority, for instance, had reiterated their resolve to demolish residential buildings on waterways.
We have experts domesticated in the ministries and the local government or the planning authorities that will look at this, your plan, and say, okay, yes, the environment and public utilities can withstand the property that you want to put there. And then if they give you approval, that means you can go ahead. But then, even the approval comes with an attachment, a kind of catch. You need to be aware of your environmental responsibility. The local government are claiming tenement rate so that they not only improve the social, the amenities, but also make the environment as lively as it should be, so that human beings can live in harmony with nature.
Governments at all levels need to provide a lasting solution to the problem of occurrence of flooding, which comes as a result of poor drainage in Nigeria. Experts have advised that in choosing any site for building, drainages should be the #1 priority before the foundation of any building.
All right, quite an interesting report there put together by Magdalene. And let's engage our guest, Professor Aliu Jero, Director General Nigerian. Now, Prof, you've seen a lot of reports since you've been around, and issues have been raised so far, from town planning to individual actions to enforcement of some of the laws we have that will help guide buildings and of course the environment. Now you are also an enforcement agency that deals specifically with the environment, and if people are not taking actions that will protect themselves from flood, you have the responsibility to enforce that law.
Yes, Nigerian has a set of regulations. Presently, there are 35 in number, and I think about 6 of these regulations touch part of this issue of plot. For instance, we have national environmental soil erosion and flood control, which deals directly with these 2 issues. When you have flooding, you tend to have also the soil erosion. We have national environmental, coastal and marine area protection. We have a lot of them, the one that protects the wetlands, river banks, and the lake shores. So, as you have said, the regulations are there. So we always try to enforce. But there are a lot of limitations. For instance, Nigerian is not everywhere. We are only present in the state capitals. So there's need for us to be present even in the local government. The staff strength is very low. But the way we work also, we engage with stakeholders. Various MDS that have also something to do with the flood control. We also work with the states and local governments because they also have a role to play. So we always come together to discuss. But what is key for us to achieve is to get individuals. Voluntary compliance is the best way to do it because you cannot be there 24 hours. For instance, when you talk about refuse dumping, somebody may wait until 12 midnight when everybody is asleep, then he evacuate his refuse and dump on the waterways. And when this flood comes, it will not select individuals. It's going to affect the whole community.
Let me take this next message. This one says, good morning, Weekend Deal. My name is Kasi Lorofa from Igmayogo Kwa East Local Government of Benue State. The problem here is that people are not flood conscious at all. Deliberate and indiscriminate dumping of refuse on waterways becomes a practice here. This act leads to the blockage of the Makodi-Enugu highway drainage, resulting in flood whenever it rains. We need to change our attitude to prevent flood and other environmental disasters. Well put. But talking about environmental disaster, today a lot of people, most especially in this part of the world, are still grappling with the idea of climate change. Some people still believe it really doesn't exist, and if it does, we don't contribute significantly to it. But is that the reason why we are taking some actions that are injurious to the environment? Of course, cutting down of trees and all of that.
Well, whether we like it or not, climate change is a reality. We can see that the amount of rainfall we are getting now is much more higher than we used to get some years back, and it's as a result of this climate change. And this issue of climate change is not restricted within political boundaries. It doesn't respect that. So whether Nigeria is contributing to this climate change or not, we must bear the brunt that is coming from either other high polluters. And we cannot say we are not contributing. Nigeria is a population of over 200 million. We generate a lot of waste, and all this waste, they contribute to the climate change. We also use a lot of fossil fuel, which we use to drive our cars and motorcycles, and also we use it in our industries. So we contribute a significant part of this carbon dioxide, which is one of the major culprits. We also have agricultural sector, which generates a lot of methane, which is also a greenhouse gas. And as you have said, we always cut down our trees. Now if you go around, most of the trees you see on the highways, they have disappeared. We use these trees as a source of firewood. Some cut them down and use them as a source of timber for construction purposes. But we don't replant. When you cut down a tree, you're supposed to plant at least 3 and not them to maturity. So we are not doing it in a sustainable manner. And these trees are known to be the carbon sink. They absorb the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, and that's the only way you offset the CO2 and address the climate change. So if you continue to do that, apart from the issue of the global warming, which is leading to the climate change, the trees are very, very important vegetative cover. When there is flooding, they tend to assist a lot in allowing the soil to absorb water so that it doesn't flow and destroy a lot of communities. So we must to change our attitudes. We must to imbibe tree planting.
Tree planting and also change of attitude. That means doing the right thing whenever we want to engage the environment. And of course, the people of Lokogoma have often, for the past 3 years, I will tell you that every year they have been experiencing, flooding, and of course that has led to loss of lives and, destruction of property. But now, what do we really need to do differently to ensuring that we, bring a lasting solution to some of these, flood incidents we are experiencing in the country? Because the early warnings are there, the prediction is there. Is it that we don't manage the information, or we just don't care?
Well, we have to go back to the causes of this flood. When we identify them, then we go and pick them one by one and provide solution. For instance, one of the major causes that we have identified now has to do with the indiscriminate dumping of refuse on our waterways. So we have to find a solution. We have to desist from doing that. So there is need to provide efficient infrastructure for the collection of this refuse. Secondly, we spoke about lack of adequate drainages. We have natural drainages, we have the man-made drainages. So we need to look at our town planning. We have to plan well, provide adequate drainages they will take care of the perennial issue of flood when it rains a lot. And thirdly, we have to engage in tree planting. We have to have a very good vegetation. When you have that, when it rains, the soil will have the capacity to contain the water. And apart from other issues, for instance, as individuals, if you have your house, when you want to build, there's need for you to live in an area, a green area, where you can also plant some trees. So this green area, when it rains, the water will be able to percolate. But when in the habit of using concrete all over, you floor all surfaces. So when it rains, the water will not have any soil to percolate. So it will gather and it must find its way. And even our cities, if you look around, we have roads, the pavements everywhere. We use a lot of concrete. Even though initially when they planned cities like Abuja, we have a lot of green areas. Some of them still do exist. So they are very, very important.
Building on waterways and drainages are risky for the structures and, more importantly, for the occupants. Such risky behaviors can result in flooding.
Whenever you are implementing a plan, you have a control, you have regulations, you have guidelines. And by the time all planning authorities, all over city management managers, strictly make sure that they abide by that guidelines and make sure nobody violates those guidelines, things will be much, much better. Anybody that violates our law, anybody that builds a water course, it doesn't have any right to do that. It doesn't have any right to implement, to build without our regulations. We remove it.
As more and more people migrate to the cities, there is increased urban expansion. And this can put more weight on the already stretched housing and accommodation. Research shows that in 2012 alone, Nigeria experienced its worst flooding recorded in history and puts total losses at $16.9 billion in 2020. Research shows that floods displaced over 20,000 people in Anambra. It was quite a devastating experience.
To make sure we enforce those regulations in which previously we are lacking in enforcement. However, our problem as a nation is we are not law abiding. We live in impunity. Whatever we say do not do, so people will feel that yes, it's doable in Nigeria. We went to an estate, housing estate that is known notoriously for flooding. While we are there, trying to make enforcement, to commence our enforcement, to make sure that all those houses that are lying in these places that have been built in the past are removed. A very high-ranking personality called we should temper justice with mercy.
Furthermore, there are direct consequences for wrongdoing, especially for officials who are expected to act with integrity. Also, when homeowners are found to be culpable,
no matter how the pressure is, it's not an excuse for any officer to succumb to that pressure.
Perhaps you want to buy a land or a house. These are things that you must look out for. The deed, for example. This is an agreement that guarantees the seller is legally independent of the house. The original land deed, the power of attorney, property tax bills, as well as approval from local authority. Have you heard about the NA order? This is what establishes the conversion of land for agricultural use to land for residential use. As vital as it is to invest in opportunities and to be a homeowner or a business owner for that matter, it is even more important to be wise and to do your due diligence before the purchase of any property or structure.
For the topic today, flooding, the challenge of flood and probable solution in the country. Of course, we have tons of messages here. We don't have time to take them, but we thank you all for the messages you have sent. It just shows one thing, that we are all committed to ensuring that we stop the menace of flood in the country. Authorities concerned must do the needful equally. Thank you very much for being a part of this program. Next weekend, certainly we'll be looking at something else. So make it a date with us. Bye-bye for now.